My husband and I might lose our new home, after my ex took out a bogus restraining order, so my husband can't be around my kids. I 32F just got married to my husband 34M a few months ago and now we bought our dream home from his parents. I have main custody over my 3 kids, and my ex still gets visitation rights. The problem is that the last time my kids hung out with him, I told him about the new house, which made him furious. He told me he didn't want his kids to move further away from him, as the new house is almost 8 hours away and he doesn't own a car. I told him I was doing what was best for my kids as the neighborhood and nearby schools are amazing at the new house, and the kids will finally have a backyard. Then he complained about my husband being around the kids too much, so they'll start seeing him as dad instead of him. He told me I would regret it if I did this, and I asked him to please let it go, and I would drive down once a month for him to see the kids, as that was as often as he visited them anyway. For the next few weeks I was packing our apartment, when one day my husband came home fuming. I asked what was wrong and he handed me a court document. He said, "This was delivered to me at work today, in front of everyone, my boss and coworkers." The delivery guy announced what it was to. "Your ex took out a restraining order on me, claiming I tracked him down and assaulted him to cooperate into letting you take the kids away from him." I was stunned but not surprised that my ex would do something like this. My ex was abusive towards me while we were together, and after I broke up with him, he beat me to almost an inch of my life. If that wasn't bad enough, while in the hospital I learned I was pregnant with triplets. I got a restraining order as soon as possible, but after the kids were born he fought for custody, and for some reason the judge didn't see why the restraining order was a problem, and gave him visitation rights, so I had to choose between keeping the restraining order and letting him have the kids alone, or have it dismissed so I could be with my children when he saw them. He paid child support in the beginning, but stopped completely since my husband and I got engaged, so now I know for a fact that if he petitioned the court about me moving the kids away from him, they would side with me for full custody. He still makes jokes about how I was crazy for the restraining order, and asked how I would like it if he got one on me, just so he could have alone time with the kids. Thankfully he never did, but was now getting his revenge, because as long as my husband has a restraining order against my ex, while my ex had rights for the children, my husband isn't allowed near them, which meant we couldn't all move into the new house together, and my husband had to find someplace else to live. We are trying to fight it in court, but they say it will take time to prove it as a false report. We discussed my moving into the house with the kids while he stayed with his parents, as we could afford to keep the apartment as well. Only when he went to discuss this with his parents, they decided to pull out of the deal for the house. Technically not everything had been completely signed yet, and they were refusing to move any further with the process. They explained that the house was for their son, first and foremost, so to have me and my children move in without him seemed ridiculous to them. My husband tried explaining the situation, and convincing them it was only temporary, but they refused to budge. They suggested my husband move in, and my kids and I stay somewhere else until the restraining order is settled, but there is no place else for me to stay with 3 children. They also mentioned no matter what, they will be selling the house within the family, so if my husband doesn't move in they're going to offer it to his cousin instead. I tried to talk everything out with my ex, but he's demanding shared custody in return for him dropping the charge. I refused, as I don't want my kids alone with him. I am so stuck and don't know what to do. We already turned in our 30-day notice to our apartment complex and our only hope is that they let us take it back, but even then my husband would have to stay someplace else. It's a huge mess.